So now we are going to see the forces which will slow moving things. First is friction, other one is air resistance. We know that if we stop pedaling a bicycle, it will slow down and stop. It is as if we need to keep pushing with the force just to keep a steady speed. However, this force is needed to balance other forces which act against the motion. These forces are friction and air resistance. So here they are giving you the example of the bicycle, that you will use the pedal to increase or decrease the speed. Friction always acts when we try to slide one thing over another. This is because all the surfaces, even polished ones, are rough even when seen under a microscope. If we try to push one surface over another, the rough pieces catch on each other. This causes a force to act against our push. So friction is basically the force which hinders the motion of an object, and it requires two things to occur. And it's basically between the moving forces and the ground. For example, the ball rolling on the ground will stop because of the friction. It cannot keep moving forever. When we want things to keep moving, friction is a nuisance because we have to use energy to overcome it. Lubricants such as oil can make things move more easily. When we want things to stop, we can use friction. When bicycle brake blocks rub on the rim of the wheel, the friction slows the bicycle down. So friction is a nuisance, means friction is a problem when you need to keep something moving again and again. So for that case, you need to use lubricants like oil.
How do things move in real life? Say a ball is moving on a flat ground and there's no external force acting on it. Will the ball eventually come to a halt? Yes, it will. Have you ever wondered why? Say you're skating on an ice rink and your friend is skating on the road. Whose movement do you think will be smoother? Definitely yours. When you hold a bottle in your hand, why doesn't it just slip through and fall? Sometimes when you're walking around in a mall, do you remember seeing a caution sign to warn you about the floor being wet? What explains all this? The answer is friction. The reason why the ball eventually comes to a halt is because of the force of friction. The reason why skating on an ice rink is easier because the force of friction is lesser there. The bottle doesn't slip through because the force of friction between your hand and the bottle doesn't allow it to do so. If the floor is wet, the friction offered by it reduces and there are chances that you might slip and fall. So what is this friction we're talking about? It's quite easy to understand its concept. Friction is nothing but a force. It is the force exerted by a surface where an object moves across it. In the first case, when the ball is moving in this direction, the force of friction is acting in the opposite direction. The force of friction offered by the ice rink floor is lesser than the force of friction offered by the road. Hence, skating on the ice rink is easier and seems effortless. The bottle does not slip down because the surface of your hand offers a friction in the upward direction. And in the case of the floor in the mall, the soapy water reduces the friction offered by the floor.
You can easily hold a glass tumbler in your hand. But will the same be true if the outer surface of the same glass tumbler is made greasy or has a film of cooking oil over it? It is due to the friction that we can write, hold, or can produce fire. It is difficult to move a heavy box on a rough surface. But it can be moved easily on a smooth surface. Friction opposes motion and can be increased if the two surfaces in contact are pressed harder. Friction can be increased or reduced by various methods. Have you ever thought why your shoes and tires are grooved? It is done to provide better grip on the ground. To increase the friction, the brakes are provided in the vehicles. As the brakes are applied, the brake pads arrest the motion of the rim due to friction. Do you know why kabaddi players or gymnasts apply some course of substance on their hands? They do so to increase the friction for better grip. In many situations, friction is undesirable, and so it is necessary to minimize it. You must have played the game of carom. We sprinkle powder on the carom board to reduce the friction so that the striker and the carom coins move smoothly on the board. Sometimes it is difficult to open the door. In such a situation, we pour few drops of oil on the hinges of a door, which reduces friction and make the movement of the door smooth. Due to repeated use, the friction between the moving parts of the machines increases, which reduces its efficiency. On applying grease, the friction between the moving parts reduces and thus the efficiency increases. It is difficult to move a heavy suitcase, but the same suitcase can be moved easily if it is provided with wheels, as wheels reduce friction.
The air is made up of gases. The molecule in these gases bump into the moving object, causing a force, air resistance, to act against the motion. At low speeds, this is only a small force. At higher speeds, it's become much larger. Air resistance can be reduced by using shapes which let the air slip past more easily. This is called streamlining. The air is gas, and gases have many particles which are able to move freely anywhere. So what happens is that as air contains many molecules, they bump into each other, they bump into the moving object with a force called air resistance. To overcome it, they used a proper shape like streamlining. It lets the air to slip past more easily, and it does not allow air resistance to become very much problem.
Air resistance, also called drag. What is air resistance? Air resistance is a frictional force that air pushes against a moving object. Air resistance is also known as drag. Air resistance always tries to slow a moving object down. The faster you move, the greater the resistance. Let's see the forces which act on an aeroplane. Air resistance and gravity are two inbuilt forces of nature which act on anything lifted from the earth and move through the air. Thrust and lift are created artificially to overcome air resistance and gravity in order to enable an aeroplane to fly. Let's see some examples. Crouching down low on the bikes helps racing cyclists to reduce air resistance on them and cycle fast. Wearing streamlined helmets with special smooth shapes is an advantage for them as they allow the air to flow over the cyclist more easily.
To go as fast as possible, it's important for speed cyclists to reduce air resistance as much as they can, which is why they wear streamlined helmets, snug-fitting clothes, and why they ride in a position which cuts through the air efficiently. It's all to do with air resistance. The front cyclist feels the full force of the air as they move forwards, but the second cyclist is shielded. For them, the air resistance is reduced, so the second cyclist doesn't have to pedal as hard. And the same applies to cyclists 3, 4 and 5. By riding close together, they save energy, taking it in turns to ride at the front and bearing the full force of the air pushing backwards.